when the Rebbe first spoke about it, the public was Yud Tammuz, and then in continuation to that, they decided to take it to court. And when the Rebbe Krinsky discussed with the Rebbe about taking it to court, the Rebbe said that preparing the documents that are related to this court case, it should be on my responsibility. So then I stopped all working, and we worked on several months on all archives to go through everything, tens of thousands of papers, and to find things that are related to this subject.
I'm Yossi Kamen. Welcome to Among Chassidim by Der Herr, an ongoing upbringing about life as a chassid, our vibrant connection with the Rebbe, and inspired living shaped by the way he teaches us each and every day. Baruchim Habayim, Rabbi Levine, thank you so much for being here.
My pleasure.
Okay, and I just want to give a little bit of a hakdama on my own, that first of all, you did a tremendous service for the world, that your role as the chief librarian of the Rebbe's library and all of the other things that you're involved with, I mean, the answers that you have from the Rebbe are probably, I didn't count, in the hundreds or more?
About 500-600.
500-600. And the reason why you have so many answers is because you really, I mean, in English, you worked for the Rebbe, mamish, and you did a big service for the world that you mamish printed every single, I don't know if every single, or is it every single?
I think so.
Every single answer you got from the Rebbe with a background. And this is all out there, it's published, the Sefer Agudas Chasidei. And I'm saying this hakdama, first of all, to thank you, but also that it's going to be impossible for us to go through every single detail because we would be sitting here forever. So we're going to try to focus on certain areas, and we'll see how it evolves. Sounds like a plan.
Try my best.
Okay, so let's begin. I always like to know a little bit of the family background, where you came from, where your parents came from, and how you how you got here.
My parents lived in Kharkov till in middle of the war. When the Germans came close to Kharkov, they fled all the way down deep in Russia to Samarkand. They lived in Samarkand till after the war. After the war, they fled Russia with fake papers. Some people, Polish people that got killed in the war, so they got their passports and they left Russia with these passports into Poland, and from there they went to Poking, which is a DP camp in Germany. They lived there for about a year and a half with the whole Chabad community that fled Russia until they settled in Paris. They came there in early Tovshin Ches, and in the end of Tovshin Ches, I was born. They lived another few months in Paris, and then they came to Eretz Yisroel, and they settled in Kfar Chabad, who was then established early summer Tovshin Tes.
So you were born in the DP camp or in Paris?
In Paris.
In Paris. And your parents, both your mother and your father, came from a family of Lubavitch Chassidim?
My mother came from Lubavitch Chassidim. My father, in the early years, there was no other yeshivas in Russia that stayed there, only underground Chabad yeshivas. So he went to Vitebsk Yeshiva Chabad and learned there.
So what type of family was he from?
Ukraine. From Chassidim, General Chassidim.
Okay, interesting. So he's learning at Taim Chetmim, then they go over to Eretz Yisroel, and that's where you're born.
Yes.
That's where you grew up, I mean.
Yes.
Yeah. And you attended the yeshivas in Eretz Yisroel, in Kfar Chabad?
In my youth, I learned in Cheder in Kfar Chabad, and then by a little before the bar mitzvah. I went to the yeshiva of Timchet Mimim in Lud. But then, after the bar mitzvah, I decided that my place is here in the yeshiva by the Rebbe. I felt this is my place, and I told that to my father several times. In the end of that year, my father was here for Tishrei, so when he went into Yechidus, he told the Rebbe my desire to come learn here. I was still so young. So the Rebbe told him this year he should stay in Eretz Yisroel, and if he will learn good, which Kidvas Mode, in there, so then in the end of the year, he should ask the Anhol of the yeshiva there to write to the Anhol in the yeshiva here. They should send them a student visa. And in that year, I tried to learn very well, and I wrote to the Rebbe that I'm going to start my efforts to learn very good. And the Rebbe wrote to me a letter when he wrote, among others, that it should be in a even of Yogaito, that Teire calls it Yogaito, and then it would be the real Umotsosa. So in the end of the year, the Hanholer wrote a letter to here to ask for my student visa, and they sent them. Until I got the visa, it was Teves Tovshin Chov Dalet, and I arrived here, Chov Beis Teves Tovshin Chov Dalet.
And when you came here, you where did you go? Where did you learn in yeshiva here?
I went to Newark, that yeshiva that later went to Morristown, and I learned there for the year of Tovshin Chov Dalet. I was supposed to, according to my age, to go stay there for another year, Tovshin Chov Hei. But then there was the Nistalkes of the Rebbe's mother, Rebbe Tzchane, and the Rebbe started davening for the Omer 3 times a day, and for bringing every Shabbos. And from Newark, they would permit the Bochim to come here only once a month for the verbringen of Shabbos Mevorchim. I said I didn't come from Eretz Yisroel to stay somewhere in Newark and to come see the Rebbe only once a month. So I stayed here. And Halholad here didn't accept me, because you're too young. I was just then becoming 16, so I should go back to Newark. I didn't go back to Newark. I stayed here. I slept in one of the rooms of all the Torah Yeshiva, and I used to learn in 770. After 2 months, then Holle here, so that I'm here to stay, so they accepted me finally, and since then I learned in 770.
I think I heard that from others, that they also had plans to go to other yeshivas. I think the group was supposed to go to Montreal, and then Tafsha Chafei, when they saw what was going on here in 770, they canceled and stayed in 770. So
some people did, yes.
And you had Meseres Nefesh to do it.
I felt that's what I came here for, not to just be somewhere and come here see the Rebbe only once a month.
Okay. So, during that time, when you were in 770, besides the upbringing, I imagine you were also in Yechidus a few times.
Right when I came after Yud Shvat, a few weeks after I came, I went into Yechidus, and I wrote of my learning in the yeshiva in Newark. So the Rebbe told me there is a yisur to go out from Eretz Yisroel to Chutz Loretz unless the purpose is to learn Torah. So therefore, if you learn B'shkidevas Mode here in the even that the Torah wants you, then you have the heter to stay here and come out from Eretz Yisroel. So that's my first Yechidus, and I learned here for the 2 years, 1 year in Newark and 1 year in 770, and then my student visa ended, and I wanted to stay here, continue learning, so I went in another Yechidus 2 years later in the end of Tovshin Chov Hei, and I wrote to the Rebbe that my student visa is over and I want to stay here. So the Rebbe said the same thing again. The only way to be able to come out from Eretz Yisroel, Terutz Loretz, is if you learn Bishkide Vasmode. So if you do that, you can try to stay here. I went to the lawyer then. There was a lawyer named Ring that he was mesader the papers for the Bochum in 770 that needed to get Americans a green card and then citizen papers. So he told me, since you have no immediate family here in the States, it will going to be hard for you. They should permit you to become a American citizen. So the only way is if there is a school that would write a letter that they invite you because they need you very much. So then they would maybe give you the green card to be able to stay here for that purpose. A few days later, Rabbi Jacobson, who was the mashpia in Yeshiva, came over to me and told me that I hear that you have difficulties getting the papers to stay here. But I have a student in Passaic, New Jersey. He runs there a day school. His name is Babroisky. So I spoke to him. He'll invite you and give you an interview, and then he'll try to give you such a letter. I went to Passaic, I met with him, and then he wrote me an invitation that he needs me to teach Hebrew in the day school. And with this, I came back to the lawyer, and he worked on it until finally I received the papers to stay here. Since the Rebbe told me that it's up to my Shkiden Asmode, so in Tovshin Chavov, the next year, I learned a lot, and mainly I used to learn at night and didn't care so much about time of sleeping and eating. The Hanholer of Mentlik tried to stop me from it, and he told me, you put your health in danger, but it didn't help. In the end of the year for Tishrei Tovshin Chov Zayin, my father came here again for Tishrei, and Rav Mentlik told him the whole story. So when my father went into Yechidus, he told the Rebbe what Rav Mentlik told him about me. So the Rebbe told him he should tell me to learn Perek Gimel in Igeres HaTshuva, where the Alter Rebbe says that if one learns Torah, he's not allowed to fast because it's going to disturb him from learning. So my father told the Rebbe he doesn't fast. He just doesn't pay attention enough for eating and sleeping. So the Rebbe told him, Mali kotla kula, mali kotla palge. What is the difference if you kill someone completely or just half? It is also not enough. So my father told me that, and since then I'm trying to be careful in times of eating and sleeping.
Meaning, anyways, whichever way, it's still not taking care of yourself.
Not proper, yes. It was very interesting in that time when my father came here for Tishrei Tovshin Chov Zayin. My Yoledes is in the end of Elul, so every year it was very difficult for me to get the Yechidus because in that days the Rebbe didn't accept Yechidus, only the guest
in El and Tishrei.
Yes, but I wanted to go in before my Yoledes, so I used to stay and wait till the end of the Yechidus, and then they permitted me to go in for a few minutes. So in the end of Tovshin Chavov, when I came into Yechidus, so the Rebbe answers my Yechidus, and when I'm ready to go out, he tells me, by the way, you probably know your father is coming tomorrow. I was shocked. He received a letter from my father, Rabung, thousands of other letters that he's arriving here on a certain day. And when he saw me in Yechidus, he realized this is my father, and therefore he told me, you probably know that your father is coming tomorrow.
There was also a story, right when you came, your father gave you a bottle of mashke.
Yes, that was the first time I went over to the Rabbi. He used, those days, they would put a bottle of mashke on the table by the Rebbe.
You can give it to the Rebbe.
Gave it to the Rebbe and for the Verbringen. So he gave me a bottle of mashke, and I, by huge vat Verbringen, between the sichos, I went over to the Rebbe and I told him, this is the bottle of mashke that my father is sending with me. So he told me, who is your father? I say, Yisrael Yehuda ben Leibelo. So he says, Levine. Okay, he took the bottle, he looked on the wine of the mashke, and he looked on the hersher, and then he turns around to his back over there, sat one of the Chabad Rabbonim in Eretz Yisroel, and he's asking him, people are using this hersher? So he says, yes. So he asks him, do you drink this hersher? He said, no. So he turns back to me and he tells me, so then Hovnishkin Faribel, don't mind if I don't accept it, and come here and say L'chaim, and he pulled me in from one of the bottles that was standing by him into my cup to say L'chaim, and then he returns me the bottle and he says, give it out to the people.
Mm-hmm. So I'm sure there's a lot that you can share about when you're a bacher. I want to get to the Agudas Chasidei. So I'll move on to you're in 770 Chafei Chavav till when?
Till Tovshin Lamed Gimel, when I got engaged.
So what happened when you were getting engaged?
Then I went to Paris to meet my future wife, but it was not comfortable to go when people see why you're going in older age, so they understand why you're going. So I wrote to the Rebbe that after Paris, I'll go from there to nearby London, and Klapi Chutz, for officially I'll say that I'm going there to help on summer with the work of Rabbi Sudak, the head shliach of London. So the Rebbe crossed it out, Klapi Chutz, and he says, you're going to go to help Rabbi Sudak. So that's what I did. I went to Paris to meet my future wife, and then I went from there to London. And in London, I went around to many yeshivas and kollelim in London and Manchester and Sunderland and Gateshead to speak with the bochim and the Rosh Yeshivas in learning in Nigle and also in about Chassidus. It was very successful, and when I came back, I wrote a report from all the visits where I was.
It's very interesting because it's a ma'aseh b'chol yom that people are going, to date and they're traveling, but here the Rebbe is basically informing that it's a shlichus.
That is correct, but nowadays people are much easier in traveling than in those days. That was out of ordinary, so I felt not comfortable. But when he gave me this mission, I was completely in this mission for 2 weeks, and then I went back to Paris, and from there I went back here.
Uh-huh. So you got engaged, and you had your chasana here, or there?
Yes, I had the chasana a few months later in Yudalat Kislev, Tovshin Lamed Dalet here.
And did you chid this before the chasana?
Yes. And then I went to the kollel, but it was a interesting thing then. For some reason, the Rebbe wasn't satisfied of how much and how they're learning in the kollel. He went there to visit the kollel in a surprise, and he saw how they're learning, and then he wrote, settled to them that he wasn't satisfied. So then he said in upbringing, he wants to open a kollel from younger light that are really learning. So he'll take 20 people, 10 would learn mainly Nigle, 10 mainly in Chassidus, from them 5 mainly in Legirse and 5 mainly in the Yune, and that's going to be the kollel. I was there in Chosen, so I felt I'll be part of it, but actually they didn't find the 20 that he wanted, or for any other reason it never materialized. So I went into the kollel and I learned there for several years.
To the regular kollel.
Regular kollel.
Okay, so while you're learning in kollel, I believe that's when your work began. Is that correct?
The first thing that I started, I did in the kollel, was the Kuntras of Nere Shabbos Kodesh. It was in the end of Tafshin Chavdala, the Sikha to the ladies. The Rebbe said that every lady and girl,
Lamed
Lamed, which was the end of the year of when I got married, and I learned in kollel, so they should light candles with the brocha. And then he spoke about it several times, and many Rabbanim...
That was Mivtza Neshek.
Mivtza Neshek. And then many Rabbanim wrote to him that Licheirin, al the Rebbe Shulchan Aruch, comes out that the girls in the house cannot say a brocha. And how come he says that they should say the brocha? So the Rebbe, when we learned in kollel, then in one day comes in Rabbi Groner and it says the Rebbe said that the kollel should learn this sugya thoroughly and then write a biur on the minhagim and why it's okay. So the kollel started looking into it, and then they decided that myself and Rabbi Lustig and Rabbi Silverberg should learn the sugya. We'll learn the sugya very thoroughly, and then I prepared the whole contrast to explain according to our understanding. We had a lot of questions, but we explained it in our understanding. And then I wanted to give it out by 3 of us, but they said you did the main work, so it should be on your name, and just would in the introduction say that we helped you. So that's how it was. I sent it into the Rebbe. I wanted to know if that's the correct explanation. He wrote some hours. He didn't go into details. And then he said I should print it, a lot of copies, and send it to each one of the Rabbanim in the United States of Agudas Rabbanim, Sardas Rabbanim, Iguda Rabbanim, and that's what I did. I got some money to print it because it wasn't going to be officially from Kehos and Lubavitch, but just my own thing as of, and I sent it out to all the Rabbanim. And then when the Igros in the Likutei Sichos was printed, we saw that in one of the letters they wrote, the Rebbe answered to one of the Rabbanim that asked him questions on the halacha, that Rebbe answered him, and then he says, Metzuruf b'zeh kuntras shekosav echad me'harabbanim hatzeirim in this subject. So I felt satisfied that I did that was my first project in the kollel for working for Chabad, for the Rebbe, what the Rebbe asked. But then, a year later, in Tofshin Lamed Vov, in Yud Beis Tammuz Verbringen, the Rebbe said a sikha that we should open in kollel we should open a mochin and the kovetz, giving out the kovetz that would gather from Kisveyad things that the Rebbes wrote in Nigle and Chassidim.
The purpose of this is Yagdil Torah, right? So the purpose is to collect things from the Rabbeim on Nigle. That's
Yes,
the purpose of it.
Yes, Rabbeim Chassidim on Nigle. He didn't call it yet Yagdil Torah, and he didn't select anyone to be in charge of it yet. So he just explained in general the purpose of it, and he said that there is still not decided who will run it. So therefore, everyone that wants to participate should write in Ha'oras to Maskiras, and that will wait till someone will be in charge on it.
So it's Ha'oras. It's people writing Ha'oras about the Inyanim from the Rabbeim in Nigle. That's what it is?
First, to get those things from the Rabbeim that was not published yet, edit it and print it in the Kovetz. And then comes the Ha'oras on it that Chassidim are writing. So I also wrote in Ha'oras, and I gave it in to Maskiras. So then calls me in Rav Chadakov, and he tells me that the Rebbe had in mind that you should be in charge of this mochin, but he didn't mention that because he wants to know what happened to the Hatzorah that you were supposed to become the Rosh Yeshiva of the Yeshiva in Maristown, and he answered you to accept it, and he doesn't know what happened. So he answered Rav Chadakov, that's correct. In that year, the Rosh Yeshiva was Rav Heller, and he was appointed in spring of Tovshin Vov to stay in the head of the kollel here together with Rav Zalman Shimon Dvorkin. So they had the opening there. So there the Menahel was Rab Shmulik Heber.
They had an opening in Maristan.
Yes, so he spoke to me that I should become the Rosh Yeshiva and to give the higher shir. So I asked the Rebbe, and the Rebbe obviously answered me to accept it, but for some reason the answer got lost, and I didn't get the answer, so I didn't accept it. So Shmuel Heber became the Rosh Yeshiva himself. So then the Rebbe writes, he wants to know what happened to that. So we called Rav Herson in Morristown, and we told him the whole story. So he invited me to come to discuss it, because he said that now already they hired Rav Shmuel Heber to become the Rosh Yeshiva. I went there and we spoke, and in the end they told me that the Rosh Yeshiva is going to stay Rav Shmuel Heber, so if I want, they could give me the second highest class to teach. So I said, I'll ask the Rebbe. I came back, and I wrote to the Rebbe what they offered me, and the Rebbe said, if that's the case, then better stay here and continue to editing the Kovetz Yagdil Torah.
So if you would have gotten that answer,
then I would become the Rosh Yeshiva of Maristan, yes. But since he didn't, so I stayed here. But I still didn't know where I should get the material for the Kovetz. So we had a lot of discussions, but nothing came out in practice. So then in Chof Ov, he spoke about it again, and he said that you thinking too much. First, print whatever Chemer you have already, and then it's going to work out. So I gave right away to print what we had already. What did we have already? It's because a half a year earlier, in Purim time, I thought maybe it would be an idea to give out a Kovetz, and I wrote to the Rebbe together with Meir Cohen that Bloy. So we offered that option, and the Rebbe answered to the Maskiras that we shouldn't do that. So therefore, later, half a year later, when he decided to give out such a Kovetz in this even. So he said, whatever you have ready for print from then, give it to print. So I gave it to print, and we added some things that we got later, and that came out the first volume for Rosh Hashanah. We still didn't have a name. I asked how we should call it. The Rebbe said, give me hatzoes, some what you think, and I gave a few hatzoes. But the Rebbe said the best thing to call it Yagdil Torah, and since then...
Was that one of the Hatzos?
No.
That was the Rebbe's own name?
Yes.
So since then it became Yagdil Torah. And this went on for years, right?
That went on for 10 years, came out every month or every 2 months, and that was my main occupation in that 10 years, and came out 72 chevres.
And there was constant hirois from the Rebbe regarding making...
Every kovetz I gave it to him, and he gave some ha'oras, some comments, corrections, and sometimes it was more complicated. There was somebody wrote something about the time of making Kiddush, 6 hours after Chatzis, and the Rebbe said in the previous years a few answers, and people didn't know exactly what it means. And some people say it like this, and some people say it like that. So I told them the 3 options, what people explain it, and what is the real thing. And I wrote it in together with the whole ha'orah that Reb Shalom Rozov wrote. So the Rebbe didn't answer yet, but every month I got the final okay to give it to print, and he didn't give me the final okay, so I didn't know what to do. So I asked the Maskiris if the Rebbe means I should wait or I should print it right away. So they answered me. The Rebbe said he wants to answer you specifically on the question you asked, and he's busy now. So when he will be available, he'll write, and then you'll print. So a few weeks later, he gave me a long letter that he wrote, and we published the kovetz with that. But that's a specific one. A few times was like that, but mainly was only corrections and additions over the years.
And all of these things, so you would write through Maskiris, and then Rebbe would send out the answers. That was the Seder.
Usually, before I gave it to print, after they set it in the print shop, so I would give a copy of it to the Rebbe, and his okay was when he gave on the Pesach Dover, he gave the date, and he gave it back to me. So that means that you're ready now to give it to print, and the date would be on the Pesach Dover like he wrote. And in addition to that, he wrote some corrections inside.
Mm-hmm. So this is the tkufa that you started working in the library during this?
No, that was only, I asked if I should continue in the library, in the kollel, or I should do this. And the Rebbe answered I should continue learning in the kollel, and that would be a project of the kollel. So I should do this as part of the work. But then the working in the library came a half a year later. Then there was another story with the Rosh Yeshiva. Here in Olateira, the Rosh Yeshiva then was Rabbi Gerelitzky. But his brother got married in Eretz Yisroel, the head shliach in Tel Aviv. So he went to the wedding for a few weeks. So they asked me to be Malamokim till he comes back. So I gave the shir and the highest shir for several weeks in Olateira. I guess they were satisfied. So when he came back, they offered me that it's a large class of 60 boys in the highest class. So they want to divide it into 2, and one of them should give the shiurim of Gerlitzky, and one of them I should give the shiurim. So I said I have to find out by the Rebbe, but I wasn't comfortable to ask by the Rebbe since he already told me not to go to Morristown and continue here. So what should I ask? So I went into Rav Chadakov and I told him the whole story, and I told him I don't know how to ask. So he told me, don't worry, I'll speak to the Rebbe and I'll tell him the whole story. And next day he calls me in and he tells me the Rebbe said he should stay here, continuing working on the Yagdil Torah. And then I asked if I should stay with it only or I should look for a job for next year. So he said that you should do this. And also then came up, there was a lot of Hisofes that came up from Kisviyat Kedesh of the Tzemach Tzedek's Shalish Tshuvas. So I should prepare a volume of the Shalish Tshuvas of the Tzemach Tzedek Miluim. And then Rav Chadikov tells me the Rebbe said that he wants you to be in charge of the library. So that's when in the early summer Lamed Zayin, I became in charge of the library, working on the catalog too, in addition to the above mentioned. But that was much work for me, so the Rebbe wrote to me I should hire more Bochum or Ingelite to work with me to prepare the catalog for the library. So that's what I did in those few years.
So that entire idea of the library was mamish Mamayla Lamata. You had no connection to it before.
No.
So
Correct.
what was happening? I'm trying to understand what was happening with the Rebbe's library till then. Like
when they got to build the library, they asked Reb Chaim Lieberman to help them to divide it into parts and to set it up. And then on the building, and
what do you mean when they got the library?
When they purchased the house in 66.
They bought the building, then
they bought the building and they devoted it to the library. They put up bookcases and they filled it up with sefarim, and they asked Chaim Lieberman to help them to divide it. And then for the next 10 years, from 66 till 76, the building and the whatever is involved with the material parts was involved Rabbi Berel Levine, and to set this forum was in charge Rabbi Groner. And in that discussion with Rav Chadikov, he said the Rebbe wants you to run the library, and he already gave the order to Rabbi Groner that you'll be in charge from now.
So in the beginning, the library was basically run by Maskidus.
Yes.
And then it was too much for them or whatever, so someone else was needed to do this.
Correct.
So the job was that there was a lot of sefarim that came in, so it was not organized to make a catalog. That was the main work.
Yeah, we took a few bochim to help me, and together we prepared a catalog for the next 3 years, from then till Tafshin Mem. In Tafshin Mem, in the middle of the winter, I wrote to the Rebbe that we just...
One second. Was there Hirais from the Rebbe about how to catalog or anything like that?
There was
details?
Hundreds of it, but going into details, that would be details that would be only complicated, and that wouldn't be just a story.
So everything that was going that you were doing, you were reporting to the Rebbe about what was happening.
Constantly, we had, if I say that about 600 answers I got over the years that I worked for the Rebbe, that means almost every day I got something from the Rebbe, instructions.
It's also unique that the whole world got answers from the Rebbe. They only got a copy of the Ksav Yad, but those Maskidus, and if you worked in the shlichus, and you got the actual Ksav Yad.
That is correct, and the unique thing is that usually people don't have so many answers Ksav for several reasons. If it's Maskiras, so everything goes from mouth to mouth, and he doesn't have to answer. If it's a shliach in somewhere, so they just write reports and they get answers from time to time. But here, I was here working under the Rebbe with his instructions on every footstep I got the instruction how to do and what to do, and everything is b'ksav, because I didn't go into the Rebbe to speak to him. So therefore, it happens that for the 15 years that I was working by the Rebbe under his instructions, it was everything written in instructions, writing instructions, how to do every little detail, if it is how to do the catalog in the library, or if it's in the Yagdil Torah, or it's other projects that he instructed me to do.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so you're talking about Tafshin Mem. You finished the cataloging of the library, right?
So I wrote to the Rebbe that we just finished the catalog.
So all those other people that were helping you were let go.
Some stayed because we still needed new books coming in. Mainly stayed with me, Rabbi Berel Levine, that he was working for me all the time, and he continued working in the library till today. But when I wrote him that I finished the catalog, that we finished the catalog, he right away had to find other occupation for me in addition to Yagdil Torah editing every month. So the Rebbe writes me, Benegel Avedis Akedesh delay, regarding the holy work that you are doing in the near future would be to prepare a volume of short memorim of the Alter Rebbe, and in the end should be his letters that he wrote. The short memorim was because in the early years the Alter Rebbe used to say short memorim, and then he started saying longer memorim. So I should prepare a volume of memorim, hakzorim, the short memorim.
Weren't there other people working on the ksavim of the Rabbeim?
That they did. They started in Tovshin Lamed Ches. It was mainly the Reb Zissel, Baron Chitrik, Reb Zissel Pikarski, and William Matosov and Gavril Shapiro. They were working on it, but they wasn't working on the short memory. So they wanted to give me a project. Mm-hmm. So he gave me this project. So I responded, if letters in the end, in the letters itself is enough for a volume. So he said, so he wrote to me, so then add to it also the michtovim of the Rebbe Mittel Rebbe and the Rebbe Tzemach Tzedek, and prepare one volume from the letters of these three. I was working on it a whole year of Tovshin Mem till I finished preparing it. Was already Chedesh Elul. In Chedesh Ov, in middle of Chedesh Ov, there is a Yachikale that is Kovetz Chofov in the Eretz Yisroel. So I finished it. I made a copy of it. I gave it in to the Rebbe, and I left to the Yachikale. A day later, the Rebbe writes, Tu B'Ov, you should have special efforts to finish it up with mafteches and everything, and set it in print and printed and bind it in a way that people should be able to learn the sefer already Chai Elul. So for 1 month he gave me all this to do. So Rabbi Berel told the Rebbe, but he just left to Yachikale, to Gan Yisroel. So the Rebbe says, if he went to Yachikale, he should stay there till after Yachikale, and then he should come back. He should do efforts to try to finish it for Chai Elul. So I right away called up my co-worker, Rabbi Berel Levine, and I told him where the original lay, and he should give it away right away to print. They should set it in print, and he should start being Magia. And when I come after Yud Gimel, after Yachikale, I right away started working on it. And when they said it, I was looking it over and correcting and adding a movie, and then the mafteches. And it was very hard, and there was probably in that month of between Tu B'Ov till the middle of Elul, I got tens of responses from the Rebbe with instructions and what to add and how to do. But actually, after all efforts, we've succeeded. It was published, printed in the day before Chayelul, and in the middle of it, we had to get some more additions that the Rebbe said wanted. So we had to go to tell the printer to wait, and we went from New Jersey till a person that had some material, and he went to his house and he got it, and he went back and he printed it as the Rebbe wanted, and for Chayelul it was bound and ready.
So that's how Igris Kodesh was born.
Yes, but then the Memorim Akzorim wasn't done yet, so then the Rebbe looked at it between Chayelul and Rosh Hashanah. Even it's a busy time, but he looked it over in those days. And for the next day, in Tzemgdalia, he wrote to me a letter, a zettel, that since you're so successful in editing it fast and good, so now is the time, reinwerfen sich, devote yourself to edit the Sefer of Memorim Akzorim of the Alter Rebbe, as we spoke then. So I started right away, and there was so many instructions how to do it, how to judge what is long, what is short, and how to set it. And I was working on it for the whole winter of Tovshin Mem Aleph till the end of the winter. In the end of the winter, it was published, and the Rebbe sent me a few things, more letters and more memorim, and he said, prepare a hashlome as a kuntras bifnei atzmei. So I wrote to the Rebbe, the letters have only a few pages, so it will be a very short kuntras. Maybe we should add the igres of the Rebbe Maharash, so then it will be at least a little kuntras.
So 1 second, so there's the Alter Rebbe, the Mittler Rebbe, Tzemach Tzedek is something different.
No, Alter Rebbe Mittel Tzemach Tzedek was together.
Oh, that was together. Okay, man. So then,
but now it's the Hashlomes of the Miluim, a few pages,
and
the letters of the Rebbe Maharash. So that was published over the summer.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so then you continued.
Then we continued the letters of the other Rebbeim, he told me to. So I started with the Rebbe Rashab, and when I got 230 letters, I wrote to him that that's what I found, and I'll start editing it. So the Rebbe wrote to me, wait, I'll give you more letters, and you should know that not everything is for print. There are private things, personal things that they shouldn't be printed. And he gave me a whole package of new letters that I still didn't have. But then he writes to me, but this is just a preparation, because mainly I want to give out now the letters of the Frierdiker Rebbe. And for that, you need somebody to help you.
Because it's so much.
Because it's so much and it's a lot of work. But it should be someone that is Shemer Sod, that is not going to tell anyone what he sees in the letters. So I wrote Rebbe, then I'll devote for that Yitzchok Villalon, that he would work with me. So the Rebbe okayed it. And then he writes to me, okay, but after Tisha B'Av, I'll bring you more. I didn't know what that means. Why after Tisha B'Av and why more? But the next day after Tisha B'Av, he comes from home with 2 large boxes, folders like this, with hundreds and hundreds of letters of the Frierdiker Rebbe. And he gave it to me, and he writes to me, obviously not everything is to be printed. There are private things or things that are related to machlekes, so they should be omitted. But start working on that. How did he have these 2 boxes? So when he was in France, in Paris, and the Rebbe was at Wotsk, Friedrich Rebbe, he instructed the maskirim that whenever one of my letters that I write, you see it's a tegendike letter with a special subject, make another copy of it and send 1 copy to the Rebbe in Paris. And from that, the Rebbe prepared all the letters in the contrasim of the Memoriam of the Friedrich Rebbe. There would be sometimes letters that the Rebbe added, and in the Kovetz Atomim, the Rebbe edited and added letters, and he also gave out some Kovetz Michtovim about Tilim and about...
All from there.
All what the Rebbe selected and the Rebbe edited, and he gave it in.
And the Rebbe brought it with him from Europe.
And then the whole 2 boxes he brought with him when he fled from France, occupied by the Nazis. So he brought it with him, and he held it in his house all the years. And that's what he wrote to me, I'll bring you more. And Mitzvah Tisha B'Av, he probably wanted to look it over first before he gives it to me. And next, after Tisha B'Av, he gave it to me. But he told me to start working with the Rebbe Rashab's letters. But I should know that this is a preparation for the Friedrich Rebbe's letters. So, and then he says from the Rebbe Rashab, you'll take out all personal items. So I prepared 2 volumes. And I gave it in before printing. So when I gave it in, the Rebbe writes, it looks like after you took out a lot of letters, still there are personal things left. So go over it again and see to take out everything that is personal, that is not for publishing, or what's machlekes. So therefore there was a lot of things about Agudas Yisroel and other subjects.
You asked about that specifically, about Agudas
No,
Yisroel.
he wrote to me that there is still things that you have to take out. So I went over it again. I took out a lot of pieces again, and then I edited it and gave it to print. And then I started the Friedrich Rebbe's letters.
And most of the Friedrich Rebbe's letters, I mean, you had them in the library. I mean, Chaim Lieberman had them.
Yes, I got it from Chaim Lieberman, and the tegendike, the more tegendike, is from what the Rebbe brought me from his house. It was several years, and I edited them, whatever I got then, in 10 volumes.
Mm-hmm.
By the 10th volume, when I gave it in, he gave it out to print it, and then he writes to me, since it's the 10th volume, which is ending the period of the years of the Friedrich Rebbe, so maybe in the end of the volume, add the documents that are related to the work of the Friedrich Rebbe and Chabad in Russia. So I wrote to the Rebbe, if that's the case, then there is enough chaimer in the library for the work of the Friedrich Rebbe and Chabad in Russia for a whole volume. So he said then prepare the volume of the history of Chabad in Russia, in Soviet Russia. But
so this is a different project. It's not
yes, after I finished the 10 volumes, so start that. But don't print it. Just prepare it. Because it's not time yet to print anything about the history of Chabad in Russia, because there are still people and the government could harm them. So therefore, only prepare them, don't print it. So I prepared it. And a few years later, I asked, is it already time? So he wrote, no, there is still persecution in some cities there, so therefore time didn't come. Wait. 5 years later, in Tovshin Mem Tes, he wrote to me I should publish it
That's Histories of Chabad.
in Soviet Russia.
Mhm.
And that was the beginning because the Rebbe wanted also Histories of Chabad in United States. But this work he gave to Kanzler. He was a writer and a researcher and writing in Kehos.
He was working with Haas for years, right?
Yes. And he told him to prepare a book like that. So he started preparing, but then he saw it's too much for him and he wouldn't be able to do it. So he came in to me and he told me, whatever I collected, take, I'm not capable of doing it. So I asked the Rebbe if I should do an history of Chabad in States also. So he asked why Kanzler doesn't do it. So I wrote to him, and then I said, do it. So I started working on the Tales of Chabad, the history of Chabad in the States. So then I asked him, there is so much material about the history of Chabad in Israel. Should I do this too? He okayed these two. So then I worked on these 3 volumes. They all came out in Tavshimem Ches.
Then after Gimel Tammuz, you did another one, right?
That's already after what we are speaking now, what the Rebbe told me. So the Rebbe told me about these 3 volumes.
Mm-hmm. That's a whole nother project that happened
But
through the
came as a continuation, because in every volume of the Igres, the Rebbe wanted me to give an introduction with a summary of the work of the Frierdiker Rebbe in that period.
The Mavai.
So, Mavai. So in the first volume, it was the period, or the very harsh period in Soviet Russia. So I wrote about the help of joint to the work. So when I gave it into the Rebbe, he says, don't emphasize the work of joint, because joint is still helping the work of Chabad in Russia, and it could harm if they see. So don't leave the history, but don't emphasize the help of work of joint. But then there was also some history about the yeshivas underground in those years. So this, he told me, to add, and there was a yeshiva here and a yeshiva there, so add the history of that. So I added all of this in the volume, in the movie to the first volume. So that work with all the meveis gave me the material to prepare the history of Chabad in Soviet Russia, because I had it from parts of the letters and parts of the material that went into the movie and other material. So that's how these 3 volumes came out, Tales of Chabad, in Soviet Russia, in the United States, and in Israel.
Okay, so now we get to, because of this, the Igris Kodesh of the Rebbe. That's the next step, right?
I never thought that I will have to be occupied with the Rebbe's letters, because the Rebbe's letters was always published as a hisofe to every krach of Likutei Sichos. There was Rebbe's letters.
Selections of letters.
And I thought after I finished from the Alter Rebbe till the Frierdiker Rebbe, my job on the Igres is over, fulfilled. But then, in the middle of Oder, Tovshin Mem Zayin, the Rebbe sends me a package of copies of letters of the Rebbe from the archive of the Maskiras, the Heteka Maskiras of the letters that he sent out. And he writes to me, see it, look what from it is capable to be printed and how we should do it, and write to me what you think. I was shocked when I got it, and I didn't know, because I didn't know where these copies is from, and what happened to the continuation of the letters that is always being published in the Likutei Sichos. So I right away went up to the Vaad Lafotze Sichos. I sat with Reb Nachman Shapiro and Label all time, and I asked them, do you know what happened here? So they were shocked, and they told me, yes, we know exactly what happened here. We asked the maskir, Reb Shlomo Mendel Simpson, who was in charge on the archive of the letters of maskiras, that he should give them letters to publish in the next volume of Likutei Sichos. And he prepared a whole bag of letters, and he gave it in to the Rebbe to show him before he gives it to us. And the Rebbe, when he got the package, rather than giving it to us, he gives it to you. You should publish it. That's what happened. But he didn't know anything more than that. So I still wasn't comfortable that I understand correctly. And I wrote back to the Rebbe about publishing these letters. There's two options. One is to continue publishing it as a addition to the volumes of Likutei Sichos, and one of them is to publish in separate volumes and in the set of the Ikris Kedesh of the Rabbeim.
So you were clarifying.
Yes,
what's the kavanah?
So I wanted to know which the correct one, what the Rebbe means. So the Rebbe crossed out the editing, publishing it in Likutei Sichos, and he wrote that I should give it out, edit it, and print it in the sefer, in the set of sefarim of Ikris Kedesh. So I asked then, till now, it will, according to subjects, so it's not an order, but maybe in the older Rabbeim it was on the order of the years, so maybe I should do it here also like that, so it will be more mesudar. So he said yes, and he ordered the letters of the archive till he became Rebbe in Tafshin Yud Aleph. The letters till Tafshin Yud Aleph was in a box in his Yechidus room, hidden somewhere, locked somewhere. From Tafshin Yud Aleph and on, it was in the archives of the Maskiras that Reb Shlomo Mendel Simpson was in charge. So he told Reb Level Goner to find that box and to give me the box. I should start working with it. So that's what happened, and that's how I started. But when in addition to that, the Rebbe writes me, now we are in before Pesach. Pesach is a period of chipozen, fast working. So try to work fast. It should be able to be very fast, like the work for Pesach. So I had to work very fast with nothing else in my mind, not sleeping, not eating, working constantly, because I had 1 month from Purim till before Pesach, and I wanted to give it out for Yud Aleph Nisan, to work on it, make the mafteches, and I wrote to him, if mafteches and if maha'ores, it could be a lengthy work. So unless I do the minimum of the ha'ores and the minimum of mafteches, and then I'll be able to do it. So he says, make the minimum of everything. It should be before Pesach. So that's what I did. And then it came out before Yud Aleph Nisan. And right away he said, work on the second volume, and it should be very fast. It should be ready for Shavuos, and they continue hurrying very much every volume in a non-normal, not humane way, that it should be easy. So for the next year, I had no day and no night continuously working on the Ikris Kedesh.
Yeah, so the first few volumes came out very quickly.
Yes.
So the whole idea of the Igris, that was Mamash on the Rebbe.
Not only Mamash and the Rebbe was by me mufrech. I didn't even think in that direction, but that's what the Rebbe wanted.
Okay. Much has been said about the fact that the Rebbe asked the Iglis to be published. You know, those that are learning the Iglis, the hadracha that you get. The Rebbe, apparently the Rebbe asked if there's a shiurim in it. You probably heard this.
Obviously, I heard it, and I wasn't involved in that part.
Yeah. Okay, so this is Mem Zayin
Till Tovshin. Why Tovshin? Because early Tovshin Aleph, the Rebbe sent me together with a group to Russia. So when I was there for a year and a half, I wasn't working on the Iglis. And what was after I came back and after Chav Zayin order, that's already a different period.
Right, and you continued the Iglis, yeah. Among Chassidim is brought to you by Chassidische Der Herr. We live in a chaotic world. A world where for us Chassidim is a seinu, lei ra'inu, we do not have the ability to hear and see the Rebbe on a daily basis. Yet we know that the Rebbe is very much with us, and the Chassidus Chabad is alive and thriving more than ever before. One needs to only tap into it. Chassidische Der Herr provides you and your family with the tools necessary to tap into all of this. Whether it's the monthly magazine, the way it all began, whether it's Der Herr books, Der Herr online content, and so much more. Men, women, and children throughout the world benefit and use these tools on a daily basis. Whether it's children enjoying the children's magazine that comes along with the regular Der Herr, or enjoying the children's podcast, whether it's Bachrim in yeshivas receiving the Der Herr, whether it's girls in high schools enjoying Der Herr club in their local high school. People all over the world and from all walks of life enjoy and utilize these tools and take advantage of it. If you're not already subscribed to the Herr Monthly Magazine, do so today at derher.org. That's derher.org. Der Herr is a dynamic organization which is committed to continue providing these tools, grow on a constant basis, and do all that we can to help this effort. Baruch Hashem, it takes a lot of resources and finances to make this all happen. You can be part of Der Herr through your financial support as well, through visiting our website derher.org, or through contacting us to setting up a meeting. Thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of the podcast. So let's go back to Mem Zayin. So obviously Mem Zayin, or started earlier, Mem Hey, is the whole story of the sefarim, which I know that you were involved in the thick and thin of the Parshas sefarim. So how did that begin? And your involvement?
When the Rebbe first spoke about it, the public was Yud Beis Tammuz, and then in continuation to that, they decided to take it to court. And when Rebbe Krinsky discussed with the Rebbe about taking it to court, the Rebbe said that preparing the documents that are related to this court case, it should be on my responsibility. So then that was in beginning of in Mem Hey. So then I and my co-worker Rabbi Berel stopped all working, and we worked on several months on all archives to go through everything, tens of thousands of papers, and to find things that are related to this subject.
So what were you looking for?
Subject that how the library started, and if it was personal property or was Chabad property. When he made the magbis that people should be sending sefarim,
The Friedrich Rebbe.
to the library, he never said to me, send me sefarim. He said, send sefarim to the Lubavitch Library. So that showed that it's a property of Lubavitch. It's not a private property. If he would take it to private, it would be not correct from him, because he never asked them to give private donations to him, only to the Chabad Library and things like that. So we were working for a few months, and also we had to prepare the lawyers that didn't have any background on the subject and on the history of Chabad. So all the lawyers, I sat with them. First I sat together with Rabbi Berel Levine and Nat Lewin, the lawyer, sat in my office for several hours to give him the background of the whole story. And then he had questions, and we corresponded in faxes for next few months, so many faxes of answers and details. And then the lawyer Shostak got involved. So he first came to meet me in my office, and then he said he must, in order to learn the whole subject, he needs me to come down to Philadelphia and to sit with him a whole day. So that's what I did. And then they started preparing the depositions. So they asked me that I should sit with them by the depositions to help them to know what to ask and to understand the answers and what else.
So you sat through all the depositions?
All the depositions of first Reb Chaim Lieberman, 3 days, and then with Barry Guari for 3 days. I sat with them, and then I had my own depositions and the whole complications. And then, after we finished with the depositions, he started getting witnesses to be on the witness stand in the court. So they also didn't know enough about the history. So I had to sit with each one of the witnesses for several hours. Beforehand. They should understand exactly what the details are, and they should be able to answer all the questions of both lawyers understand. And then I myself had to go on the stand. When the court started, the lawyers asked me to stay there with them, because whenever comes a subject they don't know, they will ask me, and they'll never know how to continue. So their lawyers complained that I'm not allowed to be in court since I'm a witness. So there was a whole discussion. Our lawyer said they must have me there because I'm not a regular witness. I'm an expert witness. So they need me there. Whenever there are complications, they discuss it with me. So the judge ruled that I should stay in the court case with the lawyers the whole 3 weeks of the court case. And then when I went up myself to the witness stand, first our lawyers questioned me, and then their lawyers. So that's how I was continuously involved with that. After the court case, each lawyer needed to write the whole summary and how they understand the whole results. So they needed me also, whatever they sent to me in fax, and I wrote corrections and explanations, and I wrote to them back in fax. And there wasn't yet the emails yet. So I was completely involved with that for that much, yes, for the next few months till their appeal, and they went to the federal court and appellate court here in New York. So they had to be prepared. So I was completely involved with them on that. And even after the verdict that all sefarim belong to us, so they needed a lot of details and about buying back the books. So they needed me to be involved with that, to prepare everything. So much that when in Tov Mem Zayin, after the ruling, the Rebbe told me to start working on the letters, and I prepared the first volume. So when he wanted to hurry me for the second volume, I wrote that the lawyers want me to prepare a whole set of documents and material for the court. So maybe I should leave the second volume, or I should leave the preparing the documents. So the Rebbe answered me, no, you can't leave them. Work on both together. And that's what I did. So I was, yes.
Sounds like the Rebbe's style.
Yes. So that's how I was involved in the court case, yes.
And also, when they seized the sefarim from New Jersey, I think you also went to check it, right?
I had to go twice. First, before the court case, the court wanted to know exactly, to pull a lien that he wouldn't be able to take any books from there. So I had to go. I went with Rabbi Berel Levine together to the storage house and to make a list and to give a report to the court what there is. And then there was luck that he didn't have the approach to it. And then after the verdict and after the verdict of the appellate court, when we went to take it, we went there to take the books. So then, together with me and Rabbi Berel Levine, went also Rabbi Shem Tov and Rabbi Krinsky. So we had to go back there again.
Okay, and were you also by the depositions that the opposition was conducting?
No, only the ones that I mentioned.
That
they didn't.
Our side did.
Our side and what our side gave the depositions to their side,
right,
which is Lieberman and Goraria, but not all the others. They didn't need me for that, so they only asked me to come with them for those that they needed me to.
Okay, and what was your interactions with the Rebbe regarding the sefarim case?
In the beginning, I just did what he told me through Rabbi Krinsky. But then, after Reb Chaim Lieberman's deposition, and I had my explanation if the approach of the lawyers to him is correct or not correct, so I discussed it with the Rebbetzin that she was involved, and then I wrote it to the Rebbe too.
1 second, you went to the Rebbetzin to discuss this issue?
Yes.
So what was the...
She wanted to know exactly how it was.
With Chaim Lieberman?
Yes. So I went to the library on Shabbos, Friday night, when she was there, to give her a report from whatever happened. And then the Rebbe...
She had input in it, or she just wanted to report?
No, just wanted to report.
Mm-hmm.
And she probably reported to the Rebbe. And it's possible the Rebbe didn't like my view on things. So then the Rebbe wrote me a whole letter of... I had a difficulty because I was very much involved with Reb Chaim Lieberman in the work of the library. And here I'm standing against him. And the Rebbe wanted to emphasize that. So he wrote me a whole long answer about how it's with Reb Chaim Lieberman, and he even told me to discuss it with Rabbonim, how I should deal with it. That was in the beginning, before the court case.
And it's I think there's two of them, too long.
Two of them,
yeah,
everything is about this subject.
It's printed in...
But then there was several more things. One of them is that when the whole subject started, I wrote a whole article for Kfar Chabad to explain what I just mentioned before, that the Rebbe never built for himself. It was he made the collections for the for Chabad, and I wrote an article. So the Rebbe, before I sent it to Chabad, I sent it in a copy to the Rebbe, and the Rebbe said he wrote Article 1, which means continue in that. And the second thing was, before the court case started, the Rebbe was very tense, unbelievable. And the lawyers told me that. And they told me, since you prepared everything and everything is so clear, and we feel we are certain going to win, write to the Rebbe the whole thing, how you view it. The Rebbe should feel confident that we're going to win. So a few days before the court case started, I wrote a whole letter with all the details to the Rebbe just to explain. I didn't expect an answer on that, but they wanted me to calm down the Rebbe with the feeling that we feel that we are going to win.
And we did win.
Yes. Yes, did Notzach. But that was the final thing was a year later in Hey Tevis of Shimem Zion, which was over a year after the court case ended in beginning of Tevis of Tavshimem Vav.
Right, and then the sefarim there was an appeal, and the sefarim only came back.
Yes, and the appeal was in the summer of Tavshimem Zion, and the court case, the hearing was in early Tavshimem Ches, and then there was the verdict of returning all the sefarim, and we went there to pick it up, as mentioned before, in Beis Kislev Tavshimem Ches.
And when the sefarim are coming off the van, only a few people are actually touching them.
Yeah, I wasn't involved in that. I didn't even know when I was there. There was constant telephones between Rabbi Krinsky and Rabbi Shem Tov and here Agudas Chabad, and I didn't even know what the subject was. The subject was that the Rebbe said they should make it b'tzine without a pirsum, because Luchas Reshenes was bepirsum and it didn't succeed, and Luchas Nies was without a person, and that's.
I think I don't know if the Rebbe said that mamish. I think that's what Chassidim explained.
I was told then the Rebbe said it. In the hero he gave to Agudas Chabad, but when he came out and he saw the whole crowd is waiting outside for the event to come with his sefarim, he started screaming on them. He didn't like that. He said, why didn't you go back to learn? And that would help more. So that was then. So when the sefarim came back, nobody was outside, only the few people. Me and Rabbi Berel was sitting in the van that brought the sefarim, and the car that came with us had in it Rabbi Krinsky and Rabbi Shem Tov.
Mm-hmm. Okay. There was something I wanted to ask you, but I'm forgetting, so I'll ask you something else. You mentioned the Rebbetzin. There were other times that you spoke to the Rebbetzin?
Yes, I spoke to the Rebbetzin several times, and I discussed that specifically in the Gem, my stories. And it was about, one of them was about the library, and one of them was about other subjects. But I don't know how much you want me to go into that.
Yeah, you
because
go
that's
into
not subject. The next subject is where we are up to is when the sefarim came back, and Hey Teves was Shabbos. So the Rebbe said on Shabbos that this day, Hey Teves, Dida Notzach, is nikva, that every year when this day comes, it's a Yom Zgula for everything that is related to sefarim and to the library. So therefore, we should decide in this day that everyone that has sefarim that could be part of the library, they should donate it to the library and to enlarge the library. That was on Shabbos. And on next day, on Sunday, the Rebbe wrote to me a whole long answer with saying that since you're going to be busy because you're going to Russia for this forum, so get someone to be involved himself with the people that are bringing in more sefarim to the library. Because in the 2 weeks later, I went with the mission of finding the sefarim of our Rebbeim in Russia, together with Rabbi Kunin and Rabbi Mindel. So these 2 weeks was very, very tense 2 weeks that I had to work with the project of preparing the library for the Chassidim that bring in sefarim to the library, and preparing myself for the trip to Russia. And there was a lot of questions on each of the two subjects, and the Rebbe answered me dozens of answers in that 2 weeks in both subjects.
Mm-hmm. So I want to speak about the shlichus to Russia. Can I ask you a few more questions about the library?
Yes, feel free.
Okay, so first of all, the things with the Rebbetzin you want to share?
If you want me, I'll tell them. The story about the library was that in the Rebbe became, after the heart attack in Tovshan Lamed Ches, a few years later, 3 years later, it became difficult for him to walk home from 770 on Shabbos. In the weekdays, they would bring him with a car, but Shabbos he would walk by foot. And walking several blocks back and forth every Shabbos a few times was difficult for him. So they decided to prepare for him an apartment in the library. He should stay on Shabbos and Yom Tov. How could they prepare? So in one of the rooms where it was filled with sefarim, they put in a dining room table and chairs, and that became the dining room. In one of the rooms that was full with sefarim, put in 2 beds, and that became the bedroom. So it was very difficult. So it was difficult for them. It was difficult for us, because whenever we go to take sefarim from the bedroom and the dining room, it's not comfortable for me or for the librarians to go in to a room where you see the Rebbe's beds and the Rebbetzins bed. So it was not comfortable for anyone. So there was a decision to take out all the sefarim from there and install the bookcases on the 2nd floor of the library, and there it should be only a dining room and a bedroom. But they knew that if they asked the Rebbe would say, "What do you need? It for us, it's okay." So they decided that one Shabbos after the Rebbe went back home, the Rebbetzin went back home, so they started working right away. They took everything apart, and we took this sefarim upstairs to the 2nd floor, and they installed the rooms. They should be a normal bedroom and dining room. That's how till Friday nothing was told to the Rebbe or the Rebbetzin. When the Rebbe came on Friday and he saw what was done, he was upset why this is done. That the Rebbetzin used to come right before Shabbos, so the Rebbe used to come in to the library when the Rebbetzin used to light candles when Shabbos comes in. And he told her his displeasure. So he went back to his room. She sent the boy, eunuch, that he was helping there, to go to my house and to tell me it's emergency. She has to talk to me right away. I understood right away what it's all about. So I went right to the library, and she told me, "Why did you have to do it? We are comfortable without it." So I told him, "We didn't do it for you. It was for us. It's not comfortable for us to go in constantly in the room. So we decided for us it's easier if we do it. So she still wasn't, she told everything to the Rebbe, and the Rebbe still wasn't satisfied of that. So then he wrote a letter of displeasure, and the Rebbe told me, write everything to the Rebbe. I wrote in everything as I spoke, and then the Rebbe answered me, if that is correct, then it's okay. In other words, he was skeptical.
That's true.
If it's true. But he didn't want to tell me it's not true. So he says, if everything that you write is correct, then it's okay.
Okay. And then later there was another apartment built, right?
Still he didn't have a living room. So, and that was in Tovshin Membeis. So 2 years
This story
later,
was in Membeis.
Yes, 2 years later, Tovshin Mem Daled, they added a room in the back of the library, in the backyard of the library. Then there was the Tashlich. They took out from there the Tashlich. They put it in on the side, and over there they dug up and they built 2 floors. The bottom floor was addition for the library for the storage, and the second floor was. The top floor was for a living room for the Rebbe.
That's the room where the Rebbe met Mart Chaliyahu?
Correct.
So that was the living room. And then there's a dining room and a bedroom.
Yes.
So the dining room and the bedroom was not redone then?
They're not.
So that was just an addition?
Yes.
Okay, and what were the other times? I know the Rebbe spoke to you about Paris, but what was that about?
That when as I wrote the movie in every volume, when, as I mentioned before, so when it came to the volume Hey, which is the period that when they came out from Europe and was saved, the Friedrich Rebbe and then the Rebbe and the Rebbetzin. So I looked at the documents and was very fuzzy. What they did in Vichy, what they did in Marseille, what they did in Portugal, and from Paris. So I decided I'll try it out. So I went in Friday night to the library, to the Rebbetzin, and I told her that I have to write, and I don't understand. What was the story? Paris, and then Vichy, and then Marseille, and then Portugal. What is the story? So she sat down, and she told me the whole story. When she told me the whole story, I wrote it down, and it went in all to the movie. I couldn't write that she told me the story. She wouldn't be comfortable. She was a lady that she didn't like anything to write about her. So I wrote the whole story, but nothing about that she told that to me. Just the story itself. That the Rebbe was in Paris when they came to Paris, the Germans. So he fled to Vichy. But all the trains was full. He couldn't get a place. But he had a paper that he shows that he's a soldier in the French army. So with this, he went on the train, and till he came to Vichy, it was already the Shkia of Shavuos. So when he came to the train station, they had to take a horse and wagon to take all the stuff we mentioned before, the boxes that you came with. But he had a lot of kisvei yad, Kaddish, and copies, and sefarim that he had with him, several suitcases. He couldn't carry it. So they took a wagon, and they put everything on the wagon. But then the Balagola wanted the Rebbe should also go on the wagon. So the Rebbe says, no, I'm walking. The Rebbetzin would be on the wagon and go slow, and I'm walking with you. And that's how he walked from the train station till the hotel where they stayed.
Shavuos.
And the night after Shavuos.
Mm-hmm. So this is a one-time thing that you went to the Rebbetzin.
That's already a few times. Then there was another one that I got in the Rebbe's letters, I got a picture of the Rebbe's letter in the early years in Tafresh Pehei in 1922 that he wrote, and the letter was a long letter to Dragachover, and it looked, we saw it's his handwriting, but he signed with the name of Mordechai Goraria.
That was a name that Rabbi Sarah Leib would use, no?
Later.
Yeah.
But then there was a Mordechai Goraria in near Petrovsk that his son of Mordechai Goraria is his son, also called Mordechai Goraria, and he was here a Rov in Chevra Shas. So we knew that there was, but who wrote this letter?
You could tell from the Rebbe's handwriting.
Yes.
Yeah.
So what happened? So I went in then to the Rebbe and I asked her if she knows anything about it. Why did he have to change his name? So she heard all the details and she said, it's very exciting and I also want to know. And the best thing is write to the Rebbe. She asked the Rebbe and the Rebbe told her, let him write to me and show me. So I wrote to the Rebbe and I asked him, was this because you didn't want in your house your parents should know that you're writing letters to Dragachover, or because of the censor? You're afraid if they'll say they'll see it's Schneerson, they'll make an issue of it. So the Rebbe answered me, no, it's for the censor, not for my parents. I didn't hide anything from my parents. So that was another time that I spoke to the Rebbe.
Okay, is that all?
Yes.
Okay. And it's just interesting to me that I guess you didn't want to, kind of ask the Rebbe, tell me the whole history, so you went to the Rebbe. It's interesting. So I'm not going in order, chronological order, but it's like on topic. So we'll go back to the chronological. You're talking about the library, so maybe let's stay on that and talk about the expansion of the library, which happened, I think, Tafshin Nun, right? Is that the right year? What was that about? What happened then?
You see, after the Rebbe spoke, after that 2 weeks that he said that people should bring in their sefarim and collections came into the library.
So all of a sudden, tons of sefarim are coming.
Tons of sefarim are coming. And till then, the library was packed. There wasn't...
So where was the library? The library was in the basement.
Basement 770 was the Friedrich Rebbe's collection, and in 766 was the Rebbe's collection.
On 2 floors?
On 2 floors.
Okay.
But now for the new books, there was no room. So I asked the Rebbe, what should I do? So he says, write to me Hatzoes. So I wrote Hatzoes. I should write Hatzoes about building. I spoke to the Agudas Chabad, to Rabbi Krinsky. And he says, just now we are preparing plans to build a big construction building on 770.
A shul.
Yes, and offices in the top. And the first floor on top of the shul would be devoted to the library. So I says, it's very good. And then the Rebbe came out to the Chanukah Even Apine. And the Even Apine was supposed to be for the shul and for the library. But the next day, the Rebbe something didn't like in the plans. And he spoke a sikha that this is a residential area and shouldn't be high buildings.
Was it the next day or it was a while later?
2 weeks later.
Okay.
In Tishrei Tavshin Memtes. This was in Chayel Tavshin Memches, and this was in Tishrei Tavshin Memtes.
Tevel.
So I wrote to the Rebbe, so what should I do now? The 10,000 books came in when the Rebbe said that everyone should bring in, and they're all in boxes. We can't even take them out from the boxes. They're in the hallways full with boxes. So the Rebbe said, speak to Agudas Chabad about building for the library in the area of 770. I spoke to them again, but they didn't have plans. So he tells me, we have a plan. Since the Rebbe said it shouldn't be such a high, tall building, we're going to build only 4 or 5 floors. And the bottom floor is the shul, and the floor on top of that is the library. And the Rebbe then was in his house because of Avelis. So I have an appointment with the Rebbe in the Chedesh Teves. I'm going to show him the plans. We're working on the plans, and I hope he'll okay it, and we'll do it. So I'm waiting for that day. And then when he comes back, and the next day, he comes back to me very upset, and he says, I showed the plans to the Rebbe, and the Rebbe looked at all the details of the plans, and he says, it's good, it's very nice plan, but don't do it. And he didn't explain himself. So I didn't know what to do. So I wrote again to the Rebbe. So what should I do? So the Rebbe wrote to me, get people to make a vada binyan and build a binyan for the library. So I then took Rabbi Zalman Guraria, Olav Shalom, and the Badal Chaim Tev and Rabbi Shmuel Shlomo Kunin, together with me. I wrote to the Rebbe if these 3 is okay to be the vada binyan. The Rebbe said yes. So then we started preparing the plans. So the whole building for the library, we had where Ashel is now on Kingston, or when Family Dollar is down on Kingston. We're ready to buy that building and do it the library. So the Rebbe said no. The Rebbe said it in a sikha. We're dealing now about a subject that is related to me, building the library. But this library, the Friedrich Rebbe started it in 770, so it must be in 770. If there is no place in 770, so do it in the adjacent building, build up more, and it should be considered as 770 because it's connected to 770. So that's when we started this construction. This construction went through the whole year of Tov Nun till we finished the facade. And Tov Nun Aleph, we did the details inside.
So the construction consists of adding a floor
In 766 and digging up the whole courtyard and making the storage rooms under it.
And then also the bridge connecting.
The bridge connecting, because the Rebbe said it should be connected, it should be called as it's in 770.
Right. So the library today is under the Chatzer in 766. And then now it's also in the next house.
Yes.
Which I think the Rebbe, there was such a Hatzah once, which the Rebbe denied.
Then we asked if we should buy the building of Rabbi Meir Ritkin and build there the library. So we spoke to Meir Ritkin, and Meir Ritkin said that he'll ask the Rebbe. If the Rebbe says so, he'll agree. He wrote to the Rebbe, and the Rebbe told him not to. So that one off the plan.
Right. Okay. So, did the Rebbe saw the new construction?
When the construction was done in Tavshinun, the Rebbe didn't go out to look at the facade. The first time he saw the facade of the building of 766 with the 3 floors was on Rosh Hashanah Tavshinun Aleph. The Rosh Hashanah Tavshinun Aleph, he went to Tashlich in the backyard. And on the way back, he stopped and he picked up his eyes and he looked on the building from all the sides.
And that's the first time the Rebbe saw the bridge also and the whole thing.
And then on the next day, on the Tzemdalia, day after Rosh Hashanah, the Rebbe told the Maskiras to tell me I should make pictures of the building as it's now, and I should send it to all donors that donated large sums for the construction of the library. Mm-hmm. And that's what we did.
Okay. And I know that the Rebbe went to the library after Chav Zayin Adar. What was that?
Yes, it was after Chav Zayin Oder in Tishrei Tovshin Nun Daled. The doctors that occupied with him, helping him, making it easier, approached me and told me that they know that the Rebbe was so involved and so much pushing for the construction of the library. Now, after it's all done, that was already later, so then it was already completely finished, not only the facade. So maybe the Rebbe should go to the library, to all the rooms, and I should explain them what the rooms are, and that would give the Rebbe a lot of satisfaction. So they didn't want people should know about it, so they decided to do it in one of the nights of Chalamei Tzukes, 2 o'clock at night. We went around from 2 till 3 o'clock at night. They took him on a chair, and they took him all the details in every room. We came in, I explained what this room is about and what is there. And when he was satisfied, he shook his head for the satisfaction, and I knew we're ready to go to the next room. If you continue looking around and looking for something, I knew that he wants to hear more details. So I continue explaining the more details till he shook his head for the satisfaction. And then I knew that we have to go to the next room.
So the Rebbe went into like the reading room?
Reading room and the storage rooms, everything. And the exhibition hall, everything he went.
The exhibition existed already?
No, not yet.
Yeah, that room.
But with that room. When we went to Bridge, the Rebbe we heard the Bochim in the Sukkah singing. So the Rebbe started looking on the window where the voice of the singing comes and steering. So I went over to him and told him that downstairs in the Sukkah, the Mashpia Reb Mendel Futterfass is verbringing with the Bochim, and that's what they're singing. So the Rebbe shook his head with satisfaction, and I understood we have to go to the next room.
And I told you last week that I was there when this happened, outside in front of 770.
Yeah, you told me that after all, although it was secret, so you standing in Eastern Parkway, and you saw from far, you didn't see it clear, but you saw it clear that something is going on. Correct. In the bridge.
And it's also, it's not a clear memory because I was extremely young. It's actually it's the first thing that I remember in my life, actually. Yes. So something like that. Yes. I didn't even know that it was a thing, but I remembered it, so I checked it out later in life. Okay, so that's the. So it's interesting that the Rebbe was in every room in the library. It's very interesting. But not in the basement.
In the basement
too. Everything. Okay, so let's go back to the story of the shlichus. There's 2 shlichus in Russia. So let's begin with the first one, Tavshim Mem Ches. What happened? Why? What? When? And where?
It was to find where is the collection of the sefarim that was in the library of Lubavitch by the Rebbe Rashab and the previous Rebbe.
Whether it's there.
Because it was in Lubavitch, and when in the First World War, when the Germans came close to Lubavitch, the Rebbe fled. The Rebbe Rashab, with his whole family, fled from Lubavitch and settled in Rostov. And the library, they took to a storage house in Moscow. After the war ended and the communists took over, they didn't return this form to the Rebbe. They just took it away from the storage and they stored it in the library, the public library in Moscow. For some reason, Chaim Lieberman, when he read in the papers, he saw that they took it away from there and they took it to Kiev, and then it was destroyed by the Nazis, so nothing was left. But he didn't know for sure, and the Rebbe didn't think that's the case.
But the Rebbe didn't believe that it was destroyed?
Yes, but we didn't have any way to finding out correct. So in Tovshin Mem Aleph, Purim time, Reb Chaim Lieberman brought to me the whole catalog that was typed up in Lubavitch before fleeing Lubavitch.
That the Frierdiker Rebbe had.
Yes. I saw the whole catalog and I felt if we have the whole catalog, we have a way of finding out in the public library in Moscow now if the sefarim are there. So I gave it into the Rebbe and I wrote that maybe it's now possible to find out. A few months later, the Rebbe told Reb Shmuel Mekunin, head shliach of California, and over there are two businessmen, Dr. Armand Hammer and Jerry Weintraub. They're doing a lot of business with the government of Russia. So maybe he could convince them to convince the government in Russia to find the collection and to return it. So he did so. But they responded, they find nothing, there is nothing there from Lubavitch collection. So Armand Hammer, I gave a copy to Armand Hammer and he gave it to the government. Here you have the whole collection. Find out if the sefarim are there. Went through another year and they said, we checked, there's nothing there. Okay, what's next? So Armand Hammer tells them, would you permit our experts in Lubavitch to come there to look, to check by themselves? They said, okay. They felt they wouldn't let us too much anyways, so we wouldn't find anything. So then the Rebbe decided to send them on the shlichus, myself, Reb Shlomo Kunin, and Reb Nissim Mendel, who is his secretary. Reb Nissim Mendel, my and Shlomo Kunin's Russian is very poor, but Reb Nissim Mendel speaks fluent Russian, so all three of us would go together. Yes, but I had to do some homework before we going. So I did some homework. What was it? I went through the catalog. It's 5,500 titles, so much more volumes. And I selected the most rare old books that are registered. And when we would check now in the catalog in the public library in Moscow, if these books are there. If these books are there, we have already a string how to find the whole collection. In the end of Tovshin Mem Zayin, there was a book fair in Moscow, and there was also a table for Lubavitch. And Rabbi Yossi Friedman went there to stand to be the head of the table of Lubavitch in the book fair. So I spoke to him. I gave him the list of the rare books. I told him, without any pirsum, go into the public library, to the catalog, check if these books are there in their collection. He did so, and he found 12 books from this collection are there in the catalog, and they're all in the same department. I took this information and we went to Russia. We went to Russia 2 weeks after Hey Teves, Tovshin Mem Ches, the famous one, and that's what the Rebbe told me, that if you're so much busy now with going to Russia and preparing yourself for this trip, with all the documents, what to look, when to look, in Moscow he sent us, and in Petersburg he sent us, and we went to Lubavitch, and he sent us to Kiev and Odessa, a whole story that we're not going into it now. It's not related. But now we want to, people should bring in books. So you need somebody to be involved with that. So I would prepared myself mainly for Russia, and Rabbi Berel was occupied mainly with this forum that was brought into the library. We went there, so we wanted to get permission to look in the storage rooms. So they said, no, that you can't. He went to the Arm and Hammer with Rabbi Kuhn, went to the culture minister, Zakharov, and told him, if we should check, we have to go look. He says, no, only with the catalog. We notify the Rebbe, they don't let us look, and they say only with the catalog. With the catalog, the books itself I can recognize according to different marks, but from the catalog I wouldn't be able to. So the Rebbe answered, try to go in the way that they are telling you and do whatever you can. Okay, so next morning we meet the librarian, and I said, you know what? There is 12 books, I have a list of 12 books that I have to check. See if you have them. So we went to the building of the rare book collection, and we filled up the requests for these 12 books, and it took them half an hour till they got it. Then it brings the books to us. When it brings the books to us, we open the book, we right away see a few words written by the Frierdiker Rebbe, by the Rebbe Marash, and by the Rebbe Rashab on different books. We knew that we got it. So we asked him, which collection is it? Is it Lubavitch collection? He says, no, it's Polyakov collection. How many books are in the Polyakov collection? About 8,000, 10,000. I says, I assume this is our collection that we need. And there are all the books. We left the library. It was on Friday morning. We went right away to the office where we could call. We called here to the Maskiris, to Rabbi Groner and to Yudel Krinsky, and they told the Rebbe here was still in the middle of the night, but in the morning they told the Rebbe that we found it and all the details. The Rebbe was so glad, and he told the Rebbe all the details. The Rebbe called her friends with big joy. The collection was found. So that's how it started then. We were there for a month. First returned Rabbi Nissim Mendel. Second returned Reb Shlomo Kunin. I stayed the last. I arrived here of Aleph Shvat Tovshim Mem Ches, a few hours before the passing of the Rebbetzin. That was our first mission. Over the month, we went to Petersburg and to Kiev and to Odessa and to Dnipropetrovsk to find if there is anything from the Rebbe's father.
The Rebbe stipulated that you should look for that.
The Rebbe stipulated they should look, and they gave me a lot of instructions on all my questions. They gave me a lot of instructions about this. He says, you are asking for my father's things because it's me. So it's Agudas Chabad. So you could demand that they should give you. But we checked in this forum, in the shul in Dnipropetrovsk, but we didn't find nothing.
That we still didn't find.
We still didn't find. Whatever was found, somebody gave that he was hiding, but we didn't find there nothing.
But was there an effort then to try to get them back, or just to...
So they said, now that we found it, you could go back and we'll deal with Chabad about returning it. You don't have to stay here for our dealing. So we returned back. For 3 years, nothing was done. They always pushed away and nothing was done. So the Rebbe sent us again 3 years later in early Tov Shin Nun Aleph. What was then? in Tovshin Memvov, there was the explosion in Chernobyl, the nuclear explosion. And then effort was made to save people from there. So Tzach in Eretz Yisroel and Aronov, head of Tzach, together with Isaac Kogan, that was from Russia, decided to try to get permission to get the children out and to settle them in Chabad Meisdes in Eretz Yisroel. Russia didn't give them permission, but far related from Isaac Kogan was Veronica Kogan. She was a lawyer, and she said she'll be able to help. So she went to the government, and finally she got the permission, and all the children came out from...
This was something that the Rebbe was encouraging them to do, right?
Yes. That was earlier, but after that was all finished, she told them, "You're dealing so much about the sefarim, I feel I can arrange that too. Come with us, and we'll work on it." They wrote it to the Rebbe. Aronov wrote that to the Rebbe, and the Rebbe responded, "Find out by Rabbi Kunin where it's holding now." So he found out by Rabbi Kunin, and he wrote to the Rebbe, and the Rebbe said, "Then go there together, work together with the Veronica in Moscow." They asked me to come with them. So I didn't feel it's important. I wrote to the Rebbe, they're asking me to come with them, but I think I can stay here. When they're going to need me, I'll come. So the Rebbe answered me, "No, if you go to now, it's going to help more to the mission." So I went with them.
You had Yechidus before, right?
That was after we got all the instructions to go. So we went, all four of us.
You also had before Memches on the way, you also spoke to the Rebbe, no?
Memches, before we went there, yes, sure. So the Rebbe told, it was then a secret, nobody knew. But the Rebbe, middle of the upbringing, he spoke that there is a story that the Tzemach Tzedek sent a shliach to do something in Petersburg, and the Chosid told him, "And if I have questions," so the Tzemach Tzedek answers, "When you'll be there, your decisions are going to be the correct ones. The Tzemach Tzedek will decide for them, and they'll make the right decisions." Nobody knew what we are talking about. Just after that, the Rebbe told me and Rabbi Kunin to say L'chaim. And then, on the next day, on Sunday morning, by dollars, we went over to the Rebbe. So the Rebbe said, "Where is the third one? Reb Nissim Mendel." So we answered, he didn't come yet, but so afternoon, we'll come all three. So in the afternoon, all three came. So the Rebbe gave us each one $18, and then they came out the proofreading from the Maimer the Rebbe said yesterday. It was in 3 long pages. So the Rebbe gave each one of us 1 page, and he says, "You learn the Maimer, so each one will need the other one. He wouldn't be able to survive himself. So that will help to the artist between you and the mission." And then he said that when we go that night, we went, that was Chof Teves, it was Sunday. So we went that night, and he said that since you're going on Chof Teves, the Alter Rebbe will work with you, and since you're going to be there on Chof Teves, the Rambam will work with them until you'll be there on Chof Teves, the Alter Rebbe will work with you. So Rabbi Shlomo emphasized, and the Rebbe would work with us. And the Rebbe answered, "Amen." So that's when we all three got the mission personally, and at night he said that, that when we were going to the airport, there should be a good delegation to go with us to the honor of the mission. So then David Krinsky went with us, and that's how we went.
This is Lamem Ches. So now,
Yes.
So now Nun Aleph.
Nun Aleph, that was in Mem Ches. Yeah, Mem Aleph we went on Tes Kislev. All four of us. Myself, Rabbi Kunyan, Rabbi Aronov, and Rabbi Kogen.
And had you heard this before also?
Only by dollars. I don't remember if we went to Yechidus. Only by dollars. Yes. And then we was in Moscow for a year and a half. When in the beginning it looked like they're going to give it to us, the collection, but they trade a cop, and they just said, and they said yes, and next day they said no, and she was working with them, and they trade here a cop, so nothing came out for the year and a half. After a while, we wanted to go back here, then we didn't let us. He said we should stay here, we should stay there till we get a box. So we came back only for short missions twice. For Shavuos, they kicked us out from Russia, and we came home back from Shavuos, and then we went back after Shavuos, and then for Yud Shvat I came, and for Pesach the Rebbe said the Shleme Kunin should go home. So, and for Bar Mitzvah, the Rebbe said Aronov should come here. But in general, we were there for a year and a half. In the beginning, they worked with us. They drove us crazy. In the end of the year and a half, it was already a year and a half later, was already after Chav Zayin Oder. Then they said they had enough with us. They are not going to speak to us anymore about the subject. So we don't have anything there to do with them. They're not speaking to us. So we didn't know what to do. It was already after Chav Zayin Oder. So in order to, I thought lechatchila maybe we should stay there. So when the Rebbe didn't let us, I asked the Rebbe, it's very hard for me to stay there. Maybe you'd permit me to go home, at least. And the Rebbe answered, B'yardov nosu, b'yardov yarzeru, b'yigia azman. You went all there together on the mission. You'll come back from the mission all together when time comes. But now stay there. It was very difficult for me, but I stayed there for a year and a half. And then I thought maybe the Rebbe wants me to stay there, to settle there. So there was the Hanhola from the Kehillah in Petersburg offered me to become the chief rabbi. So I asked the Rebbe, should I accept it? So the Rebbe answered me, what do you mean? Your work is here to run the library, and you still have to continue in it. So why are you asking about a job there? So I stayed there only as much as I could, and after Chav Zayin Oder was very difficult to ask the Rebbe, so I wrote to the Rebbe Groner. I told him to ask the Rebbe that if I should come back for Shavuos, and the Rebbe shaked with his head, and then I came back for Shavuos to continue running the library till today and on.
Okay. And your family also came sometimes with you to Russia. You asked the Rebbe about that.
One of the difficulties was that the family was here with 3 little children, and it was difficult for my wife to be with them for such a long time without me. So she said, if you are going there, maybe I could go also there with the children. So I asked the Rebbe in summer of the Nalef, after we were there for half a year. And the Rebbe said, if there is education place that would fit for your children, then they could go. So that was before the summer camp. We arranged a summer camp there. So my wife and 3 children came. They were campers, and they helped a little bit in the camp. And there was 7, 8 bochum to take care of the camp. And my wife was in the kitchen making sure everything is kosher. We were there for 2 months. It was very successful. But that was, and then half a year later, we asked again. They came again. We arranged a Chernobyl children camp. We were there with them for 2 weeks. Then the plane took us to Israel. I went with the camp with one of my children, and the same day the plane came back filled up with food for the Russian Jews. So I came back the same day, and then we were there till before Shavuos. And before Shavuos, I got the permission to come back here and to continue running the library.
Right. And it's also the shlichus changed a little bit, the one in Aleph, that you're also involved with Yiddishkeit in Russia, the group, right?
That was right when we came there. The Rebbe said that we should be, the 4 of us should be the Agudas Chabad of Russia. And then there was several shluchim there in cities, but wasn't really organized. The one that supported them was Ezra Sachem organization here. But the Rebbe wanted us to run it, so he gave us instructions, and we were involved. I went around to all 15 states to be with the shluchim till Kishinev, until in Russia, all the cities. So we were involved with the work. But then when we came back, we didn't have any more. After I came back, I continued going to Russia to meet with the shluchim in these 15 cities, but only for 1 year. Then it stopped. It couldn't continue.
Right. It's also the 2 shlichus are very different, because the first one was before the fall of communism, and the second one was afterwards.
We were there that night by the fall of communism, and they came there was supposed to be a chasana in a chuppah in the big shul, Archipov, but then after that night was the whole commotion with the fall of the government, so they came to us in our shul in Bolshaya Bronaya if they could do anything. So we did the chasana for them, and after the chuppah, I went to the main street, and I went to between the tanks that stopped the government to go there. So I wasn't involved in the fights, but we saw it all between on the main street. We wasn't in danger, but we went between the tanks.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Okay, so I think we covered a lot of what we want to discuss. With your permission, I'll ask you some miscellaneous questions. Is that okay?
For my part, if I know what to answer.
Okay.
If you ask more details that I wouldn't remember, I wouldn't be able to answer. But in general, I'll try my best.
Okay, so first of all, after the sefarim came back, Beis Kislev Memches, so there's a whole story with the Derech Emunah and printing it.
The Rebbe then, he said nobody should make a commotion out of 770, and he went to the Eil. And then he said when the sefarim come, they should bring him several books of this to the Eil. They should be able to see them there, to show them to the Friedrich Rebbe or whatever. One of the 3 books was a sefer Derech Emunah. It's a sefer in Kabbalah. And when he saw the 3 books, he came back from the Eil. He wrote to me right away that he wants this book to be edited and printed very fast, in order that we should see that returning the books means adding and learning. So Kabbalah, Maramikemes, and write a whole movie about the history of the man that wrote it and the book. I didn't know anything about it. So I asked then Rabbi Zisel Pikarski and Rabbi Lematas of the day were working on the Chassidus, and Bar Mekemes Chassidus. They should work on the Bar Mekemes, and I sat down to make a movie, and it was very difficult because it was very not clear. I wrote it into the Rebbe, and the Rebbe changed it completely and sent it back to me to rework, and everything was supposed to be in the same day. And every hour he asked the secretary, Rav Groner, to call me and ask me where they are up to in the Marmikemes, where I'm up to in the movie, and where you're up to with the printing. A whole day, and till the evening, they set it in print shop in Empire Press. But he wanted to get a copy of what they said it in before he goes home. But every while he asks if they are ready. I say, they are not ready yet. What shall I do? So the Rebbe said, he's going home, and when I get it from the Empire Press, I should bring it in to the Rebbe's house, and I should ring the bell and give it to him. I did so. When I arrived to the Rebbe's house, I rang the bell, came out Schellenberg Gansburg, and the Rebbe, and he tells me the Rebbe sent me to pick it up from you. Over the night, the Rebbe looked it through and made a lot of corrections and a lot of viroes. And then in the next day, it was ready with the Marmikemes and with the printing, and the Rebbe was very satisfied that it was so fast done.
Okay. And I know over the years there were other publications that, in between the Igris and in between the Agudas Chasidei, there was other publications that you worked on based on the Rebbe's Histories, right?
Do you really think that all this would fit in a way that I could explain it and people should be able to follow it? I just mentioned the Yagdil Torah is one description of 72 chevres. I spoke about the Agudas Chasidei. Altogether, there are about over 50 volumes. So I could give a general, but to go very specifically on each one separately, it would be too much for me, too much for the listeners. I can just say that when I was engaged, I was in London. I was by my grandfather there. He lived, Meir Gurkov, he lived in London. So when I was by him, he gave me a whole booklet of his handwriting, telling all his biography that he wrote when the Friedrich Rebbe said Chassidim should write their own biographies. So he gave it to me. So when I came back here, I made a copy of it and I sent it in to the Rebbe. That was the end of Tovshin Lamed Gimel. 3 years later, the Rebbe in Lamed Vov, when I started working with the Kovetz of Yagdil Torah and with other Kovetz, and then the Rebbe told me to do. So the Rebbe sent it out to me, and he said I should edit it and print it. So that was the first book, the second book that I edited and printed on my own by the Rebbe's instruction, not by Kehos. So that's one of them. But there is many others to just go read and see the history of each one is too much detailed for an interview.
Okay. And I guess this is another encouragement that those that are watching and listening can read the Sefer of Agudas Chasidei that you published, which is available for sale, right? It's in print. And
whatever I said today is just description, but the details of all the 600 answers, between 600 and 700 answers that I have from the Rebbe in their copy of the Ksav Yad Kodesh and the retyping of each answer and the background for each answer is all I included in the Agudas Chasidei. So my interview today is just take some of the details of the Agudas Chasidei and to describe it verbal for people to be able to follow it. But specifically, if one wants to know everything that he heard here from me, to know exactly the text what the Rebbe wrote to me, and to see the Ksavet Kodesh of what the Rebbe wrote to me, he could see it all in the Agudas Chasidei.
Okay, and I have to thank you again on behalf of Chassidim that you published all of this. And not only that, in general, you like putting everything out. For example, scanning everything from the library. I mean, in the Deher, that's something we access all the time, documents and photos and everything like that. So
that's no question that you, as the head of the Deher, years ago, whenever you give out of the Deher, you asked me for different Ksavet Kodesh Tetzlum, copies of Ksavet Kodesh, and I went out of my way to try to help the Deher in everything they needed from Ksavet Kodesh or from other books to be able to give out the Deher in a proper way.
Okay, so yashakeh for that. And hopefully it's easier now that it's all scanned. Yeah. Okay, thank you very much. And Yarech Yamim Mamlachte and Ad Tzedek.
Amen.
All right, thank you.